Welcome to a very special podcast on the Wild West Trail where we have a conversation with Jeff Kish, the Executive Director of the Pacific Northwest Trail Association, about the Pacific Northwest Trail. Now, Jeff reached out to us at 11:18 this morning, specifically in regards of our trail description and how we defined old Pacific Northwest Trail versus new Pacific Northwest Trail. Now, to give you a little history on the trail, it's been around since the 70s, and so the route has a lot of different alternatives. And now, colloquially,
it's hard to pronounce. We can spell it.
Colloquially,
we'll spell it on the.
Colloquially, on the trail, hikers actually call it the old Pacific Northwest Trail versus the new Pacific Northwest Trail. And the new Pacific Northwest Trail is on Gut Hook, and hundreds of people hike it a year. It's a beautiful trail. But the old Pacific Northwest Trail, as it's known on the trail, I didn't invent the term, is said that because there's a lot of bushwhacking. There's different mountain ranges you climb. You go to the 10 Lake Scenic Area in Montana, which is really spectacular. Some of the best hiking in the country. And so we highly recommend that people do the old Pacific Northwest Trail. And it was in these definitions of terms that Jeff disagreed with us, and so we reached out to him to further clarify his position on it. And then when we pushed him to actually come on the podcast to educate us better on the history of the trail, he never responded.
But so that's where you got the name from. People actually refer to the trail you hike. Oh, you're hiking the old trail.
Yeah, right. I didn't invent the term. It's just I'm a marketer, so I like to use. They call them keywords that other people are searching for, and so I named our map the Old Pacific Northwest Trail.
Sure.
And so in this reading, I will be reading the messages that I wrote, and Carmen will actually play Jeff.
Yeah, and this is actually the biggest guest we've ever had on the podcast.
We're very excited to have you here, Jeff.
It's a huge guest. And we're doing this really because, we can't do it any justice through explaining it. Let's just read his words.
Let's just read.
And it'll make the most sense. So, just got to get in character here. Mm-hmm. Hey, bud. I just watched your video about through hiking part of the Pacific Northwest Trail and then checked out your website. I'm curious to learn where you got your information regarding old and new routes for the PNT. Specifically, information such as, in recent years, the official route has been changed to make the hiking more palatable for newer hikers and more sustainable on the environment around it. This new management style and updated hiking map is proving to be a double-edged sword. And this part. Ever since the federal government got involved, the Forest Service has been rerouting the trail onto Forest Service roads. Why would they do this? The official story is that the trail is now more accessible for all styles of hikers, but more cynical side thinks differently. So my point is, it costs less to do trail maintenance. It's easier for the bureaucrats to sit behind... Oh, sorry, still reading this. It costs less to do trail maintenance. It's easier for the bureaucrats to sit behind their desks and proclaim they've built a new hiking trail.
And that's what we wrote on our website.
Right, so he's quoting us, so I'm quoting...
That's my words. Those are my words.
I'm him quoting your words.
Yeah. And then I respond, "Hi, Jeff. The old or original route was first established back in the 1970s. I found that trail thanks to old GPX data on caltopo.com. Since the trail got recognized as a National Scenic Trail in 2009, the route was changed to use more Forest Service roads. And this new trail is now cemented as the official route because Gut Hook Map sells this version. They have a larger reach than me, and by default, most people hike this route."
None of that is true. I think you're mistaking the ideal route and practical route from Ron Strickland's early guidebooks.
What do you mean?
In the early days, Ron's guidebooks described a route that could be hiked all the time and a route he hoped could be built one day.
Yeah, the old route follows this outline.
The practical route is the route that was submitted to Congress by PNTA in 2008, and that is the route that became the designated route today.
Right, which is why there is an old and new route.
That route hasn't changed since designation, other than minor realignments where there were private property disputes.
Well, that's not true. There is many miles of bushwhacking in the old route. 10 Lake Scenic Area, for example, is not on the new route.
That was never the route, although it's always been shown as an alternate on PNT maps. Still is.
Okay, the word alternate is a similar viewpoint to my definition as the old route.
I thru-hiked the PNT in 2014. Served on the Federal Advisory Council for PNT in 2015 and 2016. And I'm a good friend of Ron Strickland's. And I'm the current executive director of the PNTA. I have all the maps and guides going back to the mid-70s, including the map submitted to Congress at the time of designation. Okay, alternative, but your messaging about the route changing since the government got involved is completely false.
Great. Let's use federal money to open up the old route and get it off Forest Service roads. There's a lot of trail that needs to be cleared.
That can't be legally done until the comprehensive plan for the PNT is complete. It's a requirement of the National Trail Systems Act.
Yeah, my criticism of the bureaucracy is well grounded. Maybe this designation is hurting the original intent of the hike by keeping it on roads.
And again, it's not the old route. It's the route that Ron hoped would be built someday.
It's a better route. And I don't think my definition of old detracts from Ron's vision. Before federal designation, that was the founder's vision. From what you've told me, the government uses the word practical and I use the word lazy. My adjectives for the trail are different than yours, but the spirit of my argument stands that the original, or Ron's vision, is a better hike that still makes sense.
I agree there are much better routes than the places where the PNT currently aligns with roads. But what you don't seem to understand is that the current alignment has the fewest roads that it's ever had, and that we're constantly working to improve it, but just like all the older national scenic trails, this takes decades to accomplish. Suggesting that the trail has somewhat backslid to a new route is disingenuous and misleading.
It has backslided. The route I hiked did not have roads, but the Gut Hook guidebook does. The data I followed predates Gut Hook, hence my deeming it the old route. Basically, you're arguing that the government needs to officially designate the route, and I'm encouraging people to hike their own hike and get off the government-designated route.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you're misrepresenting the history of the route.
So you're saying it can't be the old route because there was always alternatives. What if I used the descriptor original route? Because I bet Ron first thought of the more badass route before drafting up the practical one.
No, I'm saying that your suggestion that this was once the route and isn't now is wrong. The founder created a route that could be hiked until the rest was built, and shared what he thought should be built in the future. That doesn't make his ideal route predate the current one.
Oh, gotcha. How about this rewrite?
Look, man, I talk to Ron on the phone weekly. I have boxes and boxes of maps, old correspondence, etc. I have a pretty good idea of the history of the trail. We were actually in the process of building out the PNT's first museum and visitor center when COVID-19 closed us out of our new space.
Okay, and here's my rewrite to make it accurate. This new management style and updated hiking map is proving to be a double-edged sword. And ever since the federal government got involved, the Forest Service has been officially routing the trail onto Forest Service roads. Why would they do this? The official story is that the trail is now more practical for all styles of hikers, but my more cynical side thinks differently. It costs less to do trail maintenance, it's easier for the bureaucrats to sit behind their desks and proclaim that they built a new hiking trail. There's a lot of good hiking trails out there that need some trail maintenance, and I encourage everyone to brave the bushwhacking to see mountains that most will never climb. Also, the museum is awesome. Where is it going to be located?
Sedro Woolley, Washington, which is generally where the PNTA has been based for several decades, although it's a new office right downtown since December. Look, I can really tell that you want the history of the PNT routes to be something that they're not. You're free to think what you want. I just wanted to make sure that you heard the truth and weren't spreading misinformation by mistake.
Well, I appreciate it, and I don't want to spread false information. I want to encourage hikers to get off dirt roads because they don't have to be there. My other goal is to act as a voice to advocates like yourself and encourage federal money to go toward trail maintenance as opposed to other aspects. There's too many roads, is all I'm saying. Plus, some anti-government rhetoric is always a good thing.
I agree there are too many roads, and believe me, I'm one of the primary advocates for increasing funding for trails, and the PNT in particular. Did you know the Forest Service tried to do away with dedicated funding for national trails last year?
Hey Jeff, do you want to do a podcast where you tell the history of the PNT? We can talk about this. It would be bomb content.
It was because of me and 2 congressmen that I work with that it was overruled. And PNT has more funding now than at any other time in its history.
Nice, I believe you.
But it's still a drop in the bucket compared to the trail's needs.
I think we need to spread your message. Thousands of people will watch this podcast.
The other side of it is that the public needs to get involved, volunteer their time, and financially support the effort. That's how the other trails were built. This sentiment that a lot of people have that the government isn't doing enough only carries so much weight coming from people who have never swung a tool or supported a trail organization in their lives.
Personally, I would prefer the government not to be involved and that all the land was controlled by the states. I think there would be more local advocacy if this was the case. But I understand your perspective, and you should get in front of my audience. I bet you could get more donations from it.
Yeah, and oh yeah, sorry.
And then he doesn't respond.
And then he doesn't respond.
And then I say, have you ever heard the saying, 1 is better than 0?
And, you know, so...
That's it. That's our conversation with Jeff.
Let me just get this straight real quick. Let me just see if I can just get this straight. So it seems like the founder's original vision is the hike you hiked, the old route. What you're calling the old route.
What I call the old route.
It has never been fully realized because essentially there's no trail there. It's a lot of bushwhacking. So essentially, the trail as it is today, the National Scenic Trail, was not the founder's original vision.
But it's the official version according to Congress.
Right. See, but it does not jive with the founder. The founder of the trail's original vision basically takes what is called, you know, colloquially the old route.
Sure, Carmen, but you don't talk to the Ron on a weekly basis, and you don't have boxes and boxes of correspondence letters.
Maybe it'd be better if we called it like the real PNT.
We call it the real PNT.
The real PNT, or the prime PNT, or the real, you know, the OG, the original.
Well, there's a lot of questions here.
There's a lot of questions. We don't know, and we're not qualified.
I mean, we're not the executive director of the Pacific Northwest Trail Association. So, Jeff, come on the show, clarify our questions.
Come on the show. I'd love to have this conversation.
We would love to talk about it because the term "old" simply came from what people are calling it. I did not invent it.
But he is definitely right about one thing. The public does need to get involved. They do need to volunteer their time. They do need to financially support the effort.
And by the way, Jeff, we do all of that with the Idaho Centennial Trail and the Idaho Trails Association here in Idaho. And we would love to help support you and the PNT, and that's why we want you on the podcast.
I think our audience would love to see it.
Our audience are big supporters of the trail as well.
And so if you are a supporter of the PNT and you have questions about the history, legitimate questions, please like this video, share this video.
Share it. Let Jeff know you want to hear, he knows the history, so we want to hear from him.
Let's get him on the show.
Let's get him on.